Joining us now, not just from the great state of Ohio, but from the best part of Ohio. Ohio Senator Rob Portman, Cincinnati. Senator Portman, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Joe, great to be back on with you.
If we were to just talk about what happened yesterday in Washington, we'd need you all the way till 9 o'clock. You're here to talk about tax reform. That's what I want to do, but I want to start with that lunch. So President Trump tweeted out this morning that there was a lot of, enthusiasm in the room, not necessarily Senator Flake and Senator Corker, but he said there's a lot of applause and a lot of enthusiasm for the prospects for what happens with tax reform. Were you at the lunch?
I was at the lunch, and there was a lot of enthusiasm in the room, including from Bob Corker and Jeff Flake about tax reform, because, you and I have talked about this so many times, Joe. This is an opportunity to help the people we represent in very tangible ways. It's going to increase wages, increase jobs, help the middle class that are going through a period where there's flat wages and higher expenses. And so it's something exciting. We're finally getting around to doing what we should have done a long time ago. We
got to talk about the details, but all the news is about Flake and that speech that he gave, and some of the comments from Senator Corker this week, in addition to comments that he's made previously. And I know you, and I know you're a mild-mannered, very dignified gentleman, and I figure you might share some similar thoughts about this. Do you think it needs to be, if you weren't going to run for re-election, is that why you're in line with the president, or do you not think that, as a man of good conscience, do you not think it's necessary for you to speak up, which is what Flake was saying yesterday? Why don't you
look, I do speak up when I disagree with his policies, and I speak up when I agree with them. And my job is to represent the folks in Ohio, including in your hometown of Cincinnati. And you got to work with the president. I worked with Barack Obama. I got 50 of my bills signed into law by Barack Obama, as you know. So, our job is to put our head down and start legislating. I mean, that's what people hired us to do. So that's what I'll continue to do.
So do you support Senators Corker and Flake in, if you want to call it attack or whatever it is that we saw, attack, whatever it was that we've seen this week? Do you support that? Do you think it's good? Do you think it helps the party, or do you not ascribe blame to them? Do you ascribe the blame to President Trump for where we are with what people are calling disunity in the Republican Party?
Yeah, both those guys are friends of mine. They're both good friends because they do focus on what's right. And by the way, both of them are for tax reform. So the notion this morning I've heard that they're somehow going to vote the other way because of their views about the president is crazy. They're going to do what's best for the people they represent, and that means that they're going to be for pro-growth tax reform that creates more jobs and higher wages and helps the middle class in their state. So I think everybody ought to focus on tax reform and getting health care costs down, dealing with this opioid crisis. As you know, Joe, we got a real crisis in Cincinnati and in Ohio, and that's the president's going to do something on that tomorrow that I support. So I think you got to decide what's best for the people you represent. Focus on that. If the president is successful, the country's more successful. But you have to disagree with him on policy issues as they come up, and I continue to do that as well.
No, I know. Policy issues are one thing, but, whether you disagree with, I don't know, whether he's a moral, an example for our children, et cetera, you're not really commenting on that. I mean, you were not going to resign from the Senate because of a tweet, I guess, are you?
No, I think we ought to kind of allow Twitter not to distract us from the work we're supposed to be doing.
How about what? Let me ask you this, because I thought it was weird when the other thing Corker said was, and we were here, and we're in this business with we worry about people's retirement all the time, that they're not prepared. So we saw that 401k trial balloon floated, and then Trump came out and said that's not going to happen, which was like we thought, hey, this is a good time, that's a good use of Twitter. And then we heard, Corker say, you should stay out of this. We're going to write this ourselves. You shouldn't be weighing in on that.
Yeah, look, as you know, I feel very strongly about this. That was my favorite tweet of the year, probably. And the reason is the idea of changing to a Roth rather than a traditional 401k or IRA treatment is to be able to save money in this 10-year window. It's kind of a gimmick. In other words, longer term, actually, the federal government gets less revenue. And so I think it was a way to try to pump up the revenue, which is important to try to get tax reform done. But I think it would have resulted in fewer people having access to retirement plans. The take-up rate among 401ks and IRAs when they're offered as Roths is much less than it is on traditional ones. And if you were to tell people you can't get a traditional retirement plan, defined contribution plan, you'd see less take-up.
Yep.
So, you know, in the thrift savings plan, as an example, the government plan, it's about 7 or 8% is the take-up on Roth, and everybody's offered it. So it's the wrong way to go at a time when we are desperate to get more people, particularly the baby boom generation, to start saving for their retirement so that we're not so reliant on Social Security.
Senator, we could, there's a lot of minutia in the tax bill we need to get to talk about, the state and local taxes, whether we, you know, how do you stop everyone from going to 25% on the pass-through? I don't know whether we can add to that discussion. So let me ask you something that's not about the tax reform. You saw the other news yesterday that I was alluding to was that a couple of investigations, one into the uranium deal and another one into the way Comey came up with that letter like 2 months before he interviewed anyone, but you know, in the Justice Department action. And then the GPS fusion news that came out. You saw that too, that it wasn't some nebulous force giving money to this Steele character. It was the DNC and Hillary Clinton. Are you just keep your head down, or? You got 10 seconds. We don't have time, Senator, but you're lucky.
Listen, let me just say one thing about that. I think the Senate Intelligence Committee is going to roll these up into one package. I think they're going to do a good job.
All right.
Yeah, Warner and Burr are doing a good job.
All right. Thank you. Sorry, we got
Thanks, Joe.
break.
Great to talk to you.
All right, good to see you.